Have you ever loved someone who keeps you at arm's length? Someone whose silence is louder than words, whose distance makes you question your worth? You reach out and they pull away, you give more and they withdraw further. It's frustrating, it's painful, and yet you stay. Why? Because love isn't about giving up, it's about understanding, growing, and transforming. Today, we're diving deep into the silent struggle of loving an avoidant man. We're going to uncover the hidden truths, break through the walls, and equip you with the keys to unlock real connection. An avoidant man didn't wake up one day and decide to shut you out. His walls were built long before you arrived. They weren't constructed to hurt you, to reject you, or to make you feel unloved. They were built out of necessity, out of survival. If you've ever tried to love someone who pulls away the moment things get too close, you know how painful it can be. You start to wonder if you're not enough, if you're doing something wrong, if you're the reason he keeps retreating. But here's the truth, you are not the problem. His patterns of avoidance were shaped long before you ever entered his life. Many avoidant men have experienced emotional neglect or inconsistent love during their early years. Maybe their caregivers weren't emotionally available, or perhaps they grew up in an environment where vulnerability was punished instead of nurtured. Over time, they learned a critical lesson. Love is not safe. Dependence is dangerous. Emotions lead to pain. So what did they do? They adapted. They became self-reliant. They learned to suppress their needs, to disconnect from their feelings, and to see emotional closeness as a threat rather than a source of comfort. Now, fast forward to today. He meets you, he's drawn to you, he enjoys your presence, and he may even love you in his own way. But the closer you try to get, the more his survival instincts kick in. It's not that he doesn't want connection, it's that deep down. Connection feels like he's spent his entire life avoiding. Every time you reach for him emotionally, a subconscious alarm goes off in his mind. What if I get hurt? What if I lose myself? What if she expects more than I can give? And so he withdraws, not because he doesn't care, but because caring too much feels overwhelming. The biggest mistake you can make is taking his distance personally. If you internalize it, if you see it as proof that you're unlovable or unworthy, you'll begin a cycle of self-doubt that will only drain you. His avoidance is not a reflection of your value, it's a reflection of his conditioning. When you understand this, you stop seeing his behavior as rejection and start recognizing it for what it truly is, fear. And when you understand someone's fear, you gain the ability to respond with strength, with awareness, and with love that isn't rooted in insecurity. You step out of the emotional battlefield and into a place of clarity where you can decide, is this the love I choose? And if so, how do I navigate it without losing myself? When an avoidant man pulls away, the instinctive reaction is to chase. It feels natural because in most relationships, when there's distance, you bridge the gap by moving closer. You try harder, you reach out, ask questions, and attempt to reassure him that your love is safe. But with an avoidant man, this approach backfires. The more you pursue, the more he withdraws. It's not because he doesn't care, it's because closeness triggers something inside him that makes him feel trapped, overwhelmed, or emotionally suffocated. His mind equates intimacy with a loss of independence. It's not logical, but it's deeply ingrained. He has learned either from past relationships or childhood experiences that emotional closeness comes with expectations, obligations, and sometimes pain. So when he feels you're getting too close, his instinct isn't to embrace it, it's to create space. And the moment you try to close that space too quickly, he feels an even greater need to escape. It's a cycle that plays out over and over again. You sense him pulling away, you move closer, and he moves even further until you're left feeling frustrated, unloved, and confused. What most people don't realize is that the best way to bring an avoidant man closer is to do the opposite of what feels natural. You create space too. Not out of punishment, not as a game, but as a way to show him that love doesn't mean pressure. It means freedom. When he senses that you're not chasing, that you're not demanding, that you're not trying to force him into a level of connection he's not ready for, something shifts. He starts to feel safe. And when he feels safe, he may begin to return, not out of obligation, but out of choice. Creating space isn't about ignoring him or pretending you don't care. It's about holding your own ground, maintaining your emotional balance, and showing that your happiness doesn't depend on his immediate presence. It's about demonstrating that you respect his need for distance, but at the same time, you have your own life, your own passions, and your own sense of self-worth. When he realizes that you won't smother him, that you won't chase him into a corner, he starts to lower his defenses. He may not say it out loud, but deep down, he begins to associate you with something different: love that doesn't imprison, connection that doesn't demand, and a relationship where he can breathe without fear of losing himself. Love is a language, but not everyone speaks it the same way. When you love an avoidant man, you may expect him to express love in the ways that feel natural to you through words of affirmation, deep conversations, constant reassurance, or consistent emotional presence. But if you look closely, you'll realize he has his own way of showing love, one that may not be as obvious or comforting as you'd like, but is just as real. The challenge isn't whether or not he loves you, it's whether or not you recognize the way he expresses it. Avoidant men tend to value actions over words. He might not say, "I love you" often, but he'll fix something for you, help you with a problem, or show up when you least expect it. He might not engage in deep emotional discussions, but he'll share a random fact, invite you into his personal space, or make subtle gestures that show he cares. If you're only looking for love in the way you express it, you might miss the ways he's already giving it. And when you miss those signs, you might assume he doesn't care, which can lead to resentment, frustration, and unnecessary conflict. Instead of demanding that he love you in your language, learn to understand his. This doesn't mean suppressing your own needs or lowering your standards, but it does mean recognizing that emotional expression isn't one size fits all. If you constantly push him to be more verbal, more expressive, or more open before he's ready, he'll feel pressured and withdraw even further. But if you acknowledge the ways he's already showing love, if you appreciate his small gestures rather than dismissing them as insignificant, you create a safe space for him to expand his emotional capacity over time. It's also important to remember that just because he doesn't need the same level of emotional connection as you doesn't mean he doesn't value the relationship. His comfort zone is different. He might not crave deep discussions every night, but that doesn't mean he doesn't think about you. He might not initiate intimacy as often as you'd like, but that doesn't mean he's uninterested. If you can meet him where he is without losing yourself in the process, you build a bridge rather than a wall. And when he senses that he can love you in a way that feels natural to him without constantly falling short of your expectations, he'll start to open up in ways he never has before. An avoidant man doesn't fear love itself, he fears what love might demand of him. He fears the vulnerability, the expectations, the possibility of losing himself in someone else's emotions. If he has spent years building emotional walls to protect himself, he isn't going to tear them down overnight just because you ask him to. If you want deep conversations, meaningful connection, and true emotional intimacy with him, you must first create an environment where he feels safe enough to open up. Without emotional safety, every attempt at closeness will feel like pressure to him. And pressure is the one thing that makes him retreat. Emotional safety isn't about forcing him to talk. It's about showing him through your actions, your patience, and your consistency that he can trust you with his emotions without fear of being judged, overwhelmed, or controlled. Most avoidant men have learned that expressing feelings leads to pain. Maybe they grew up in a household where emotions were dismissed or punished, or perhaps past relationships left them feeling trapped. As a result, they hesitate to share what they truly feel because deep down they believe it will lead to conflict, obligation, or emotional entanglement they don't know how to navigate. The worst mistake you can make is pushing for emotional depth before he's ready. If he feels interrogated, if he senses that every conversation is a test of his emotional availability, he will shut down. Instead, focus on consistency. Show him that you are there, not as someone who demands emotional closeness on your terms, but as someone who respects his pace. Small, low-pressure interactions build trust far more effectively than intense, heart-to-heart conversations he isn't prepared for. Let him come to you in his own time. One of the most powerful ways to create emotional safety is to listen without reacting. When he does open up, no matter how small the moment may seem, resist the urge to analyze, correct, or push for more. Just be present. A single sentence about his day may not seem like much to you, but to him, it could be a significant step. If you respond with patience instead of expectation, he will begin to associate your presence with comfort rather than pressure. And over time, as he realizes that he won't be punished for being vulnerable, he may start to let you into the parts of himself he once kept hidden. Loving an avoidant man can feel like an emotional balancing act. One moment you're deeply connected, and the next he's withdrawn into his own world, leaving you questioning where you stand. It's easy to become so focused on understanding him, supporting him, and adapting to his emotional needs that you slowly begin to neglect your own. You convince yourself that if you just love him the right way, if you just give him enough space, if you just prove that you won't abandon him, then maybe, just maybe, he will finally let his guard down and love you the way you need. But in the process, you risk losing yourself. The greatest mistake you can make in a relationship with an avoidant man is shrinking to fit his comfort zone. It's one thing to respect his need for space, but it's another to suppress your own desires, emotions, and expectations just to keep the peace. Love should never come at the cost of your own self-worth. If you're constantly walking on eggshells, afraid to express your needs because you don't want to push him away, then you are sacrificing too much. If you find yourself questioning your own value every time he pulls away, then the relationship is no longer just about love. It has become a battle for validation. True love is not about waiting endlessly for someone to change. It's about growth, reciprocity, and mutual fulfillment. Yes, he may have deep-rooted fears of intimacy, but that does not mean the relationship should always be on his terms. Your needs matter too. You deserve to feel cherished, valued, emotionally secure. If you are the only one making adjustments, the only one compromising, the only one trying to keep the relationship together, then it is no longer a partnership, it is an emotional burden. The most powerful thing you can do is maintain your own sense of self. Keep your passions, your goals, your friendships, and your joy alive outside of the relationship. A man with avoidant tendencies is drawn to strength, to independence, to a partner who is whole within themselves. The moment you start to lose yourself in him, he will unconsciously pull away even more, because deep down he does not want the responsibility of carrying someone else's emotional well-being. But when you stand firm in who you are, when you love him without making him the center of your world, you set the tone for the kind of relationship you deserve. And if he cannot meet you there, then the most loving thing you can do for yourself is to walk away with your head held high. Loving an avoidant man is not about cracking a code or breaking down his walls with force. It's about shifting your perspective and recognizing that his distance is not a reflection of your worth, but a deeply ingrained survival mechanism. When you understand that his avoidance is rooted in past experiences rather than a lack of love, you stop taking his behavior personally. This shift allows you to approach the relationship with clarity instead of insecurity, patience instead of desperation. But understanding alone is not enough. You must also decide whether this kind of love aligns with what you truly need. Relationships thrive on balance, and love cannot be a one-sided effort. If you are constantly chasing, constantly waiting, constantly bending to fit his limitations, then you are not in a relationship. You are in an emotional cycle that drains you more than it fulfills you. Real connection isn't about proving that you are worthy of his love. It's about mutual effort, mutual growth, and mutual commitment. When you create space instead of chasing, when you allow him to come to you instead of pressuring him, you shift the dynamic. He begins to feel that love isn't something that traps him, but something that allows him to breathe. And in that space, he may finally learn to choose connection instead of escape. But even if he does choose connection, you must never lose sight of your own emotional needs. Love should not be a test of how much you can endure. If you are constantly trying to translate his love while neglecting your own desire for consistency, intimacy, and reassurance, then at some point you must ask yourself, is this the love I want for the rest of my life? Relationships require compromise, but compromise should never mean abandoning yourself. If you keep shrinking, if you keep silencing your needs just to keep him comfortable, you will wake up one day feeling lost, disconnected, not just from him, but from yourself. The real power in loving an avoidant man isn't in fixing him, healing him, or waiting for him to change. It's in standing firm in your own self-worth and recognizing that love should be an addition to your life, not something that drains your energy. Yes, you can love him, you can support him, and you can create an environment that makes him feel safe. But at the end of the day, he must meet you halfway If he cannot, then you must have the strength to walk away, not because you don't love him, but because you love yourself too much to settle for a love that leaves you feeling unseen. The silent struggle of loving an avoidant man is real, but you don't have to suffer in silence. The moment you stop chasing, the moment you stop compromising your own emotional needs, is the moment you regain control. You have the power to choose whether to stay and navigate this relationship with awareness, or to step away and make space for the love you truly deserve. Either way, the choice should never be about fear or attachment. It should be about honoring yourself, your happiness, and your right to a love that fulfills you, not just one that you work endlessly to sustain. Thank you for taking the time to listen, reflect, and embrace these insights. Love is a journey, and whether you choose to stay, grow, or walk away, always remember that your worth is not determined by someone else's ability to love you the way you need. You deserve a love that is fulfilling, mutual, and empowering. If this message resonated with you, don't forget to like, comment, and share your thoughts. Your experiences matter, and your voice can help others who are facing the same silent struggle. For more powerful insights on relationships, self-growth, and mindset transformation, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications so you never miss an update. Thank you for being part of this journey. Stay strong, stay true to yourself, and keep moving forward. Until next time, take care and stay empowered.